Maxwell sat in the dimly lit shrine, his throat dry, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. The air was thick with the scent of burning herbs, dry blood, and something else, something rotten. The priest's gaze bore into him, his milky white eyes reflecting the flickering flames from the fire pit. "You must kill your mother," the priest's voice was raspy, inhuman. "And when you hear a baby's cry in your house, you will die." Maxwell swallowed hard. He had come seeking wealth, not this. But images of his past clawed at him, his father's gambling debts, their house with its leaky roof, his mother's bent back as she scrubbed other people's floors just to feed him. He clenched his fists. "If I do this, you promise wealth beyond imagination?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. The priest nodded solemnly. "Wealth, power, respect. But once the child's cry reaches your ears, the spirits will come for you." Maxwell hesitated. His mother was all he had left. But what had love ever given him? What had kindness ever bought? He exhaled and nodded. The ritual began that night. Chants echoed through the shrine, the walls seeming to close in around him. A black goat was sacrificed first, its blood collected in a bowl. Then, the priest handed him a dagger. The next sacrifice had to be his own doing. Maxwell's mother had been asleep when he returned home. He sat by her bedside, watching her breathe, his chest tightening with guilt. But then he thought of the suffering he had endured. He raised the dagger. By the time the night ended, he was no longer the same man. The next day, money rained on him like a curse disguised as a blessing. Business contracts flooded in, luxury cars lined his driveway, and people who once ignored him now begged for his attention. But in the silence of his mansion, his mother's last breath haunted him. Far away in a small village in IMO state, Mabel hummed as she carried a basket of yams home. The sun beat down on her dark skin, but her beauty still shone through. People often said she was blessed, not just in looks, but in kindness. A sleek black car rolled to a stop beside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a well-tailored suit. He was handsome, with piercing eyes that sent a shiver down her spine. "Hello, beautiful," he said smoothly. "I'm Maxwell." Mabel narrowed her eyes. She wasn't one to be easily swayed by money, but something about the man unsettled her. Yet, he was persistent. Day after day, he visited her mother's roadside store, eating roasted corn and laughing with the villagers. He made himself seem normal. Eventually, she let her guard down. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and soon, Maxwell proposed. The village buzzed with envy and excitement. Mabel's parents, though cautious, agreed to the marriage. After all, what mother wouldn't want her daughter to marry a rich man? The wedding was a grand affair, but as Mabel walked down the aisle, an unease settled in her chest. She didn't know that behind Maxwell's dazzling smile lurked something monstrous. Maxwell's mansion was beyond Mabel's imagination: gold chandeliers, marble floors, servants at her beck and call. But as he gave her a tour, his hand tightened around her wrist. "There's one rule," he murmured. "Never enter the penthouse." Mabel forced a smile. Of course. But curiosity festered. Strange things began happening. Shadows moved where they shouldn't. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she swore she heard whispers through the walls. And Maxwell? He would disappear at odd hours, returning with his clothes reeking of incense and something metallic, something like blood. When Mabel discovered she was pregnant, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe a baby would bring them closer. But at 3 months, she woke to sharp pains ripping through her belly. By morning, the child was gone. Maxwell didn't mourn. He simply stroked her hair and whispered, "Don't worry. There will be others." It happened again. And again. Each pregnancy vanished without explanation, leaving Mabel weaker, her body hollowed out by grief. She stopped smiling, stopped hoping. But she started watching. Then one night, curiosity overpowered fear. While Maxwell was away, Mabel found the spare key. With trembling hands, she unlocked the penthouse door. The room was suffocating. Candles flickered against the walls, illuminating symbols drawn in dried blood. A wooden altar stood in the center, soaked in something dark and viscous. And at the heart of it all, her wedding photo, stained with something fresh. Mabel's stomach lurched. Her babies. Their lives had been stolen for this. The realization sent her stumbling back, bile rising in her throat. She locked the door and fled, but her mind screamed the truth. She had married a monster. Mabel confided in her mother, who took her to a pastor known for battling dark forces. The pastor listened, his face grave. "Your husband made a blood pact. Each miscarriage is a sacrifice. If you want to live, you must act now." Mabel, terrified yet determined, nodded. But she couldn't just run, she had to be smart. When she realized she was pregnant again, she hid it. She wrapped herself in loose clothing, prayed at night, and never let Maxwell suspect a thing. But the spirits knew. Maxwell began to have nightmares, visions of his mother's ghost, blood dripping from her eyes. His businesses started crumbling, deals failing at the last minute. The occult leader warned him. "You need another sacrifice. This time, it must be the child." Maxwell agreed. The night Mabel went into labor, a storm raged outside. With her mother and the pastor by her side, she delivered 2 healthy babies, a boy and a girl. The first cry echoed through the room. Far away, Maxwell, in the middle of his final ritual, froze. A sharp pain stabbed through his chest. His veins darkened, his body convulsing. He clutched his throat, gasping. The spirits had come for their debt. As the cries of his newborns filled the air, Maxwell's wealth, his power, everything he had sold his soul for, turned against him. His mansion shuddered. The walls cracked. The spirits dragged him down into the darkness he had once embraced. By morning, Maxwell was gone, his body found twisted and lifeless in the penthouse. Mabel, though broken, was finally free. She moved with her children to a small but peaceful home, surrounded by love and warmth. The mansion was abandoned, a cursed reminder of the price of greed. In the end, the cries of her babies were not a curse. They were her salvation. The story highlights the devastating consequences of unchecked greed and the pursuit of wealth through dark means. Maxwell's desire for riches led him to betray the one person who loved him unconditionally, binding himself to a curse that ultimately destroyed him. Meanwhile, Mabel's resilience, faith, and motherly instincts helped her break free from the chains of darkness. In the end, the story teaches that no wealth gained through evil ever lasts, and true prosperity comes from integrity, love, and perseverance.